Hello, and welcome to this review of the Rogue Files historical romance book series by Sophie Jordan. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot, and you're watching Random Olive Reads. First up is While the Duke Was Sleeping. Poppy is a worker in a flower shop who is smitten with one of the regular customers, even though the Duke doesn't pay her much attention. When she sees him fighting in the street with another man, and doesn't see an oncoming carriage, she pushes him out of the way, saving his life, but also rendering him unconscious. The man he was fighting with turns out to be his illegitimate half-brother, Struan, who he refuses to acknowledge. In the confusion of bringing the injured Duke home, Poppy is assumed to be the Duke's fiancé. Struan is skeptical of that, but still believes Poppy to be the Duke's paramour. The Duke's household and family are overjoyed to meet Poppy and enthusiastically welcome her to the family, causing her to feel even more guilty about the deception. Throughout all of this, Struan both antagonizes and physically pursues Poppy, which she both enjoys and rejects. Even though she isn't truly engaged to the Duke, she still isn't free to pursue Struan, who is not offering anything honorable to her anyway. This book was definitely entertaining, and I enjoyed meeting the Duke's warm and welcoming family. The scandal of it all is book 2 of the series. We have widowed Duchess Graciella, who is the stepmother of the Duke from the first book. She hesitantly seeks a night of fun at a pleasure club, but needs rescuing by her stepson's best friend Colin, so she isn't caught by her stepson. There's barely an age gap here, with Graciella being only 6 years older than Colin, but everyone feels a little scandalous about it. Graciella was treated poorly by her late husband, even though she tries to project a happy, loving image to her stepchildren and her daughter. And she tries to have a little bit of adventure at the cajoling of her best friend. She gets in way over her head at the pleasure club and somehow ends up kissing Colin to hide her identity. He proposes an affair with her, and she is both intrigued by his attention, but also insulted that she isn't worthy of courtship or marriage. Meanwhile, Colin has his own family issues, having been orphaned at a young age, and he has been attracted to Graciella for years, but kept his honor and manners in check for the most part. Colin is pursuing Graciella pretty ardently here, and she tends to give in, even though she knows it's unwise. It's a fun book to read, especially when we start to see the fallout of everyone's actions. The Duke Buys a Bride is book 3 of the series. Marcus, our same Duke that we've been seeing in the past 2 books, has run away from all of his responsibilities after the events of book 2 when he catches his best friend with his stepmother in a compromising position. He's on his way to his estate in the north of Scotland. On the way there, he happens across a village wife auction and then buys/saves the girl who is being crudely sold off. Alice has been married in name only to her late father's friend since the age of 15 and provided care for the man's children and household. Her childhood friend was supposed to come bid on her during the auction so that they could start their new lives together, but that guy disappeared and didn't show up. Although she is purchased by Marcus, she has no idea who he is or if he's trustworthy. He declares that they won't really have a real marriage and that he will employ her as a housekeeper at his estate. But then we have this road trip romance, traveling on horseback, stopping at various inns, even potential villains. There's a lot going on. This book had a really interesting setup, and it was nice to see Marcus slowly let down his walls and realize what a privileged life he has led so far. This Scot of Mine is book 4 of the series. We have Clara, the younger sister of Marcus. She gets herself into a scandal by declaring herself pregnant to break off an unwanted engagement. She banishes herself to her brother's Scottish estate to preserve her family's reputation. Her brother's neighbor and local laird, Hunt, is visiting and quickly offers her marriage in light of the scandal. Hunt is eager and willing to take on another man's child since his own family seems to be cursed. The men of Hunt's family tend to die before their first child is born and has been doing so for 5 generations. Hunt has long denied himself a wife and children, and bringing up another child seems to be a way to circumvent the curse. The downside here is that Clara isn't actually pregnant, and this betrayal and risk of Hunt's death hovers over their entire relationship. The Duke's Stolen Bride is book 5 of the series. We move away from the original Duke's family here, and we are following Marion, who was a companion to Clara. She is the impoverished oldest sister, and she wants to save her own family's financial circumstance by becoming a courtesan. Except she has no experience whatsoever, so she seeks out the advice of the neighborhood depraved Duke, Nate, for some lessons. He's insulted at first, but then gives in, and the relationship is mostly him trying to get her to loosen up. It's sad to see how very poor Marion and her family are and how their choices are limited, but Nate feels sorry for Marion and also desires her so much that he can't seem to stay away from her. The Virgin and the Rogue is book 6 of the series. We have prim and proper Charlotte, who suffers from terrible monthly cramps, which are usually aided by a tonic provided by her sister. This month's dose of tonic turns out to be an aphrodisiac, and Charlotte pretty much accosts her brother in law's stepbrother Kingston in the middle of the night. She feels horribly guilty since she's engaged to somebody else, but Kingston tries to convince her that she's a passionate woman and much too good for her betrothed. Charlotte tries to avoid Kingston as much as possible so that she doesn't submit to further indiscretion, but he is just constantly underfoot. Kingston has his own feelings of inadequacy, being the illegitimate son of a dissolute earl with no sense of home or sense of belonging. He is envious of Charlotte's family and security and believes himself to be unworthy of her. Both of these characters really just need to get over their self denial and admit to themselves and each other what they really want. The Duke Effect is book 7 of the series. We have youngest sister Nora, who studied healing with her father, who was the town doctor, and Nora has been serving as the village healer ever since his death. Unfortunately, she has also been corresponding with people who have been writing letters to her deceased father and signing her father's name with her medical advice. When Army Colonel Constantine is back in England as the heir to a duke, he seeks out Nora's father for a medical consult and is outraged to find out that he has been corresponding with Nora this whole time and believes her to be a charlatan. With the threat to her reputation as a healer, she does everything she can to convince him that she is qualified and competent, including sneaking away from her house to go see Constantine in London to help with his family member who is ill. While it all works out for the pair romantically, it was actually strange there wasn't any fallout with Nora's older sister after she snuck away in the middle of the night to go to London. In Bed with the Stable Master is just a really short story that is part of the Rogue Files series. It takes place about the same time as the events of Book 6. One of the housemaids, Vera, and the stable master, Rufus, generally bicker at each other while they're on the job. One day, Vera is caught in a rainstorm and rescued by Rufus and taken to a cottage for shelter. With wet clothes to remove and some quiet isolation, plus some simmering attraction, these two end up having a tryst that leads to an honorable proposal. And it's just a super quick, short story to read and a fun little interlude. The series is best read in order, and I feel like there's a pretty distinct break in the middle of the series. The first 4 books revolve around the Duke of Ottenbury. He is the Duke who is asleep for most of book 1, and his illegitimate brother is the main character there. His stepmother and best friend are together in book 2. The Duke himself finds a bride in book 3, and his younger sister is the main character of book 4. The plots are very scandalous and slightly bonkers, which I love. It's weird to see that we don't see the romance with the Duke's remaining sister, who is said to be serious and stern. So that part's a little weird. It's like, what happened to her? We jump into the next part of the series with Clara's companion from book 4, and then move away from the Duke of Ottenbury's family altogether. So the second part of the series deals with the Langley sisters, Marion, Charlotte, and Nora, in their small country village. Again, this part makes most sense reading in order as all of the events roll into the next one. We still have slightly bonkers plots here, especially with the accidental lust potion coming into play with book 6. Overall, these books were fun and steamy to read with a few crazy villains here and there. Definitely a fun series to read. Thank you so much for watching this video. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.